if things get extremely difficult, as sometimes they will do in depressions, it's not a bad idea to have a second passport, in my opinion.
A second passport as a different place, relocating to another place. Bob, you mentioned a number of things. You actually mentioned in this book a number of things which people could look into as a way to survive the bear market. Am I not right? So I don't know if you have time just to mention that quickly here. What sort of things do you think people should look into? Again, this is not investment advice. This is not recommendation to invest in anything. It's purely for education purposes. But I'd like to hear your view, because there's a few chapters here on what to potentially look into as a way to survive and profit from the next bear market in stocks or Bitcoin.
When we were talking earlier, I mentioned the fact that we had very strongly recommended Treasury bills and floating rate notes, which are 2-year agreements with the government to pay you the T-bill rate. So as the T-bill rate changes, you get that interest. It keeps readjusting, which is a way better deal than being stuck in a bond that's lost half its value. So that's one important way to protect yourself.
So short-term T-bills you mentioned.
Exactly. Now, people say, well, what if the government goes under? Yeah, that's probably going to happen one day, but it's not going to happen tomorrow. So we're okay with that. I think real money is important to have. It's important to have some gold. We are currently bullish on gold. We think it's going to go to a new all-time high.
Physical gold you're talking about, not ETFs or things like that.
Absolutely. You want the physical. We also have found what appears to be an extremely safe vault storage company offshore. And I think, we've recommended that, and people can look that up. If they get Conquer the Crash, they can check it out for themselves and see if that's something they would like. And that's important because recently there were raids on some places where people had stored gold here in the United States. It's like, oh, well, maybe you want it in a jurisdiction where that's not likely to happen. I think it's important to have some of your liquid net worth in an offshore bank, a bank that is not within the Federal Reserve System and the FDIC system, which I think is terrible, because when one bank has been irresponsible, they fine all the other banks to shore up the irresponsible bank. And so that just weakens the strong banks. And I think it's important to have at least some of your money outside that system. So I dug and I researched and I talked to lawyers and other people, and finally discovered a bank that is not in the United States that I think is quite safe. Of course, I can't guarantee that, but from the data we saw, they're highly liquid, especially relative to U.S. banks. So, and then one other thing that I would just mention quickly in passing: if things get extremely difficult, as sometimes they will do in depressions, and we've seen times when Europe used to be was in perfectly fine shape, and suddenly it was the site of a war, and that can happen in Asia as well. It's not a bad idea to have a second passport, in my opinion, and so we kind of lead people in the direction, if they're interested, in how to get those.
A second passport as a different place, relocating to another place.
Well, it's not so much that as having another option. Let's suppose an authoritarian regime takes over in this country and said, well, we think travel outside the country might be dangerous for Americans, so we're not going to honor your passports anymore. You're going to have to stay in the country. Well, it might be good to have another one if you wanted to actually travel outside. So, it's about how much money do you have, and how paranoid are you, and how many safety things do you want. So we offer a few suggestions.
Thank you very much indeed, Bob. And guys, make sure you do check out Bob Prechter's newsletter, which you can get a great discount if you go to this particular link. That's leadwave.com/Alessio. Check it out in the description. I believe you also get a discount on Bob's book as well. Highly recommend it. Check out his book. Thank you very much, Bob. Really appreciate it.